Ruth Harper's burned hand trembled as her father shoved her toward the stranger. $50. That's what 9 years of cooking his meals and mending his clothes was worth. The man who'd bought her contract reeked of whiskey and cruelty. Her mother wouldn't look at her. Her brother laughed. But from across the muddy street, a tall rancher on a black horse locked eyes with her, and something passed between them, recognition maybe, or just two broken souls seeing each other for the first time. 3 days later, everything would change. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and stay until the very end of this story. Comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far Ruth's journey travels. Now let's begin. The coins hit her father's palm with dull thuds. $50, Silas Turnbull said. That's generous for damaged goods. Ruth Harper stood in the March cold outside Cooper's trading post, 24 years old with burns covering her left hand from wrist to fingertips. The skin was puckered and tight. 3 fingers curled inward. The fire happened when she was 12. Her father never let her forget it. She can cook with one hand, Malachi Harper said. Reads and writes too, more than most women. Reading don't scrub floors. Ruth's mother sat rigid in the wagon, eyes fixed on nothing. Her sister Sarah examined her fingernails. Her brother Ezekiel leaned against the wheel smirking. Deal's done, her father said. Ruth felt something crack inside her chest. She kept her face empty. Tears were weakness. Girl, get your things. Turnbull grabbed her burned arm. She flinched. His fingers dug into scarred tissue. You got a mouth on you. We'll fix that. Across the street, Nathaniel Bennett sat his horse. He'd come for fence wire, nothing more. But something about the scene froze him. The girl, the way she held herself straight, the way her family wouldn't look at her. Their eyes met. Gray eyes, he noticed, the color of winter rain. Eyes that had stopped expecting kindness, but hadn't stopped watching for it. Turnbull yanked her toward the trading post. She stumbled, caught herself, disappeared inside. Nate, Miguel said softly. We should go. In a minute. Not our business, amigo. I know. But he couldn't shake those gray eyes. 3 days later, he rode back. The trading post was closed. He knocked on the side door. A woman answered. Margaret Turnbull, 45 bruises on her wrists. I'm looking for Silas. He's sleeping it off. Come back tomorrow. It's about the girl. Ruth. Something flickered in Margaret's face. What about her? I want to buy her contract. She ain't for sale. I'll pay triple what he paid plus this. He pulled out a deed. 10 acres, good water, in your name only. Margaret's hands shook. Why? Because she deserves better. He'll be angry. Let him be angry at me. Margaret disappeared, returned with Ruth. Same thin dress from 3 days ago, burned hand wrapped in bloody rags, right cheek swollen purple. Ruth saw him and stopped. You. Me. The man from the street. Nathaniel Bennett. Folks call me Nate. Why are you here? To take you away from this. Ruth laughed bitter. Another transaction. Who'd you pay this time? Your contract's been transferred. But come spring when the pass clears, you're free to leave. Until then, you've got a roof, food, honest work. Nothing you don't choose. Ruth stared. Why? Because someone should have chosen better for you. She looked at Margaret, who nodded. Take the chance, girl. Ruth climbed into the wagon. No belongings to pack. They rode in silence for an hour. Finally, Ruth spoke. What do you want from me? Company if you're willing. Work if you're able. Nothing you're not. Men always want something. I'm not most men. That's what they all say. Nate was quiet. Then, my wife Sarah died 4 years ago. Cholera took her and our daughter both. I've got land and money and everything a man's supposed to want. No reason to care about any of it. Then I saw you. Now I got a reason to try again. I'm supposed to be that reason. Maybe helping you gives me one. Ruth studied his profile. You're either the kindest man I've ever met, or the most dangerous. Maybe both. The ranch appeared at dawn. Solid log cabin, well-maintained barn, cottonwoods along a creek. Ruth touched the doorframe. Warm wood, good joinery. You built this. Me and Sarah. Took 2 years. It's beautiful. It's empty. Inside, fire laid ready. Clean bed with a quilt. Table set for 2. Books on shelves. This is too much. I don't deserve... Stop. First rule here, you don't talk about what you deserve. You just are. That's enough. Ruth's knees buckled. She sat hard, buried her face in her good hand and cried. Nate stood awkwardly. I'll start breakfast. He left her crying in his kitchen. An hour later, he'd made eggs, bacon, coffee. Sit. She sat, stared at the plate. You need to eat. I can't remember the last time someone cooked for me. She picked up the fork. The eggs were overcooked. Bacon burned. Coffee bitter. She ate every bite. You're a terrible cook, she said. I know. I could do better. I know that too. Even with this. She held up her burned hand. Especially with that. Their eyes met. Not romance. Recognition. Two people who'd lost everything finding something neither could name. What's the work? Ruth asked. This week mending tack, organizing supplies, feeding chickens, whatever you can manage. And after, we'll figure it out. That's not much of a plan. It's the only one I've got. Mail arrived that evening. A letter. Her father's handwriting. Nate opened it, read 3 lines, fed it to the fire. Ruth appeared in the doorway. What was it? Nothing that matters. But they both knew. Her family knew where she was. That night, Ruth lay awake listening to Nate pace. Storm clouds gathering. Mid-March brought warmth. Ruth knelt in the garden planting seeds. Her limp had faded. Work and food had strengthened her. Nate watched from the porch, smiling. Hoofbeats interrupted. Moses Trent rode up slow. Got trouble coming, James. Clara's family heard she's here. They're coming for her, or for money. Moses dismounted. Territorial laws murky. Unwed woman family can claim custody if they argue unsound mind. From the barn, Ruth heard every word. Old fear crawled up her spine. She went inside, started packing. Better to leave than drag Nate into poison. He found her 20 minutes later, bag on the bed, hands shaking. What are you doing? Leaving before they come. No. I bring trouble. You brought this place back to life. I was dead 5 years. You walked through that door, and I remembered what living felt like. My family will destroy you. Then we fight them together. That night, a blizzard hit. Snow piled fast. Wind howled. They were trapped. Ruth sat by the hearth. Nate added wood, then sat beside her. Tell me about her, Ruth said. Sarah. So he did. How they'd met. How she'd loved this land. How she'd wanted children. How the birth went wrong, and he'd had to choose. How he'd failed at both. I should have done something different. You did everything you could. Can't seem to put it down. She took his hand. My family said I was God's mistake, punishment for some sin. Maybe they were right. They were wrong. His eyes burned. You're the first real thing I've felt in 5 years. The storm raged. Inside walls fell. They talked until the fire burned low. When Ruth dozed off head on his shoulder, Nate stayed still. Dawn came gentle. They stepped outside. World transformed white. But on the horizon, dust cloud. Riders approaching. Her family had come. Silver Ridge Town Square. Midday. Crowd gathered. Ruth stood beside Nate, chin up, hands steady, despite trembling inside. Her father climbed down. Jacob Brennan in Sunday clothes. Her brother behind him. Her mother stayed in the wagon. There she is. My daughter stolen from honest work. She wasn't stolen, Nate said. She was bought legal from a man who had no right to own her. Jacob's lawyer stepped forward. Territorial law is clear. Unwed woman of unsound situation can be returned to family custody. Nate pulled out bills. Here's $500. Take it and leave. Ruth's world stopped. Money again. Always money. I'm not for sale. The words tore out loud and jagged. The crowd gasped. She looked at Nate. Saw his face change as he realized how it looked. She ran, limping, stumbling. Down the street, into the alley. Gone. Nate started after her. Pritchard blocked him. Court hearing tomorrow morning. Judge Harrison will decide. Jacob added his piece. She's my daughter. Law says she comes home. Law also says slavery's over. But here you are selling your child. He pushed past. Went looking for Ruth. Found her in his barn loft. Knees pulled to chest. Face buried. Clara, you tried to buy me. Her voice broke. Just like them. I was trying to make them leave. Always money. That's all I am, a transaction. That's not true. Then why won't you listen? I said I'm not for sale. You didn't hear me. No one ever hears me. She turned her back. He stood below, helpless, called her name twice. She didn't answer. Night fell. Nate sat on hay below, head in hands. Ruth stayed silent above. Midnight found Nate at Sarah's grave. Small plot beneath cottonwoods. He knelt. First time he'd cried in 5 years. I failed you. Now I'm failing her too. You're doing it wrong. Moses emerged from shadows. You tried to buy her freedom with money, but freedom ain't for sale. It's for fighting for. I can't lose her. Then stop trying to save her like she's property. Stand with her like she's a partner. Tomorrow in that courtroom, tell the truth. Not about what you paid, about what she is. What if it's not enough? Then at least you'll have done right. Moses left him there. In the barn loft, Ruth found an old box. Sarah's journal. She read every page. Final entry. If I don't survive this birth, I hope James finds light again. Tell him it's okay to live. Tell him love doesn't run out just because hearts break. There's always more. He just has to be brave enough to reach for it. Ruth closed the journal, tears streaming. She climbed down at first light, found Nate at the table exhausted. She touched his shoulder. I'm not leaving, and neither are you. Ruth, you didn't betray me. You tried to protect me the only way you knew. But protection isn't what I need. I need someone to stand beside me, not in front of me. Then that's what I'll do. Moses arrived as the sun broke. Judge wants testimony at 10. You two ready? Ruth met Nate's eyes. He nodded. We're ready. They rode to town together, side by side, ready for battle. The courthouse was packed. Judge Harrison banged his gavel once. Brennan family petition to reclaim custody. State your case. Pritchard stood. Your Honor. This is simple. Miss Brennan is unwed with physical disability. Sold by her family to Mr. Gibbs. Mr. Cordell purchased her contract without consent. We argue she requires family care. He presented testimony from Mrs. Gibbs coerced, stating Ruth seemed disturbed at the trading post. Judge turned to Nate. Your defense. Nate presented the contract, explained the rescue. Ruth's work at his ranch. Legal purchase doesn't prove she's better off. Could be you're just a different cage. Then Ruth stood. Room went silent. She limped to the front. Your Honor, may I speak? Harrison nodded. They called me lame. Said I was God's mistake. Sold me because I reminded them what they lacked courage to see. Worth beyond what's convenient. Her voice didn't waver. Mr. Cordell didn't buy me. He saw me. I chose to stay. I work his land, manage his books. I've rebuilt what my family tried to destroy." She turned to the crowd. "If being able to think and choose makes me unsound, judge me, but judge them first. What kind of people sell their child?" Courtroom erupted. Mrs. Gibbs stood shaking. "I lied. I was scared. She was never disturbed. She was the sanest person there." Moses rose. "I've known James Cordell 20 years. He's honorable. Miss Brennan's got more sense than half this town." Nate stepped forward. "Your Honor, I've got land, money, reputation. I'll give it all up before I let her go back. She's free, and if she'll have it, she's my partner, not my property." Judge leaned back. Long silence. "Miss Brennan, what do you want?" "To be seen as I am, capable, free, home." The judge nodded, banged his gavel. "Contract is void. She was sold under false pretense. Clara Brennan is a free citizen with full rights. Family petition dismissed. In fact, I question the soundness of any parent who'd sell their child. Get out of my courtroom." The gavel fell. Final. Ruth and Nate stood together, breathing hard. Around them, applause erupted. Jacob stormed out, face purple. Ruth turned to Nate. He was smiling. First real smile. "We won," she whispered. "You won. I just stood beside you." Outside, Moses clapped their shoulders. "That's how it's done. Now go home." They did. 2 months later, the ranch bloomed. Ruth knelt in the garden planting tomatoes, her limp barely visible. She laughed at something Nate said. "They need room to breathe. They're vegetables. They don't breathe." "Everything breathes. You just have to pay attention." Moses rode up. Brennan family left the territory. Farm foreclosed. Ruth nodded. No triumph. No sorrow. Just relief. Sunday morning they rode to church. Ruth hesitated at the door. Nate took her hand. They walked in. The congregation turned. Then slowly people stood. Not in protest. In respect. The Reverend smiled. "Miss Brennan, Mr. Cordell, welcome." That evening they sat on the porch watching sunset. Nate handed her a document. "Deed to half the ranch. Partner means partner." Ruth stared at the paper. Her name, legal owner. She kissed his cheek, tears falling. "Thank you for what? For seeing me when everyone else looked away. Thank you for letting me." They sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened. "What now?" Ruth asked. Nate smiled. "We build. Whatever comes next, we build it together." Together. Her hand rested in his. Not romantic spectacle, just quiet truth. Two people who'd been broken finding wholeness in each other. Out here, worth wasn't measured in what you could do, but in who you were when the world told you you were nothing. Ruth Harper had taught a lonely rancher that lesson, and together they'd built proof that some things couldn't be bought or sold, only earned the hard way. The morning after the confrontation, Ruth couldn't stop her hands from shaking. She stood at the kitchen pump, trying to fill the coffee pot, but water kept sloshing over the sides. Her burned hand cramped, her good hand trembled. Everything felt fragile, like she was made of glass, and one more impact would shatter her completely. Nate came in from feeding the horses and found her standing there, frozen water pooling on the floor. "Ruth." She didn't respond. Didn't even seem to hear him. "Ruth." He touched her shoulder gently. She flinched so hard she dropped the pot. It clattered against the floor, water spreading everywhere. She stared at it, then at her hands, then at nothing. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Waiting. For them to come back. For you to realize this was a mistake. For everything to fall apart again." Nate picked up the pot, set it on the counter. "Look at me." She couldn't. Kept her eyes fixed on the floor. "Ruth, look at me." Finally she did. Her gray eyes were wild with something close to panic. "They're not taking you," he said. "I don't care what the law says. I don't care what your father claims. They're not taking you." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." "Nate, you don't understand. My father doesn't quit. He's like a dog with a bone. He'll drag this through every court. He'll destroy your reputation. Let him. I've got money for lawyers. I've got Tobias who knows the law better than any judge. And I've got something your father doesn't. What? You, on my side, willing to fight. Ruth's breath hitched. What if I'm not strong enough? Then I'll be strong enough for both of us until you are. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But belief required trust, and trust was something her family had beaten out of her years ago. I need to work, she said, pulling away. I need to stay busy. Ruth, please, just let me work. So he did. He watched her throw herself into every task with desperate intensity, scrubbing floors that were already clean, mending clothes that didn't need mending, reorganizing the pantry 3 times in one day, anything to keep her mind from circling back to the terror of the night before. By evening, she was exhausted. She sat at the dinner table, barely touching her food, staring at nothing. You should eat, Nate said. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten all day. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground. Ruth's fork clattered onto her plate. What do you want me to say, Nate? That I'm terrified. That every sound makes me jump. That I keep expecting to wake up back at Turnbull's, or worse, back with my family. That I don't understand why you're helping me, and it's driving me crazy trying to figure out what you want. I don't want anything. Everyone wants something. Not from you. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why did you buy my contract? Why did you bring me here? Why are you fighting for me when you could just let me go? Nate was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because the day I saw your father sell you, I saw my daughter. Not literally, but the way you stood there alone with no one fighting for you. And I thought about Emma, my little girl. If she'd lived, if something had happened to me and Sarah, if she'd ended up alone and scared and treated like she was nothing, I'd want someone to help her. I'd want someone to see her as human, not property. Ruth's eyes filled with tears. I'm not your daughter. I know, but you're someone's daughter, and you deserved better than what you got. That doesn't explain why you care so much. Maybe I don't have a good explanation. Maybe I just saw someone drowning and I couldn't walk away. Ruth wiped her eyes with her burned hand, the scarred tissue catching on her eyelashes. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. Don't apologize for asking questions. You've got a right to understand. I've never had someone fight for me before. I don't know how to accept it. Then let me teach you. She met his eyes across the table. Something shifted between them, subtle but profound. Not love, not yet, but the foundation of it. The recognition that they were both broken in ways that fit together. Okay, she said softly. Teach me. The next morning, Tobias rode up with news. His weathered face was grim as he dismounted. Judge Harrison's agreed to hear the custody case next week, he said without preamble. Your father filed papers claiming Ruth is of unsound mind and needs family protection. Ruth's stomach dropped. Unsound mind. It's a legal maneuver. Happens more than you'd think. Family claims a woman can't make her own decisions, court gives them custody. That's insane, Nate said. That's the law in some territories. Montana's murky on it. Depends on the judge. Harrison's fair, Nate said. He'll see through this. Tobias shifted uncomfortably. Harrison's fair, but he's also traditional. He believes in family bonds. And your father's lawyer fellow named Pritchard, he's slippery. Knows how to work a courtroom. What are our chances? Ruth asked. Honest 50-50, maybe worse. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. There's another option, Tobias said slowly. What? You two could marry. Legal husband overrides family custody in most cases. Ruth's face went white. Nate's jaw tightened. No, Ruth said immediately. Ruth, it might be. No. Her voice was fierce. I won't be saved by becoming someone else's property. That's just trading one cage for another. Marriage doesn't have to be. It does. In the eyes of the law, in the eyes of everyone. I'd go from being my father's property to being Nate's property. That's not freedom. That's just a prettier prison. Nate felt something twist in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or respect. She was refusing the easy answer because she understood what it would cost her. Then we fight it in court, he said. Properly. Against a system designed to keep women in their place. Ruth's laugh was bitter. We'll lose. Maybe, but we'll lose on our terms. Tobias shook his head. You two are either the bravest people I know or the most foolish. Can it be both? Nate asked. Usually is. After Tobias left, Ruth paced the cabin like a caged animal. Back and forth, her limp barely noticeable now, but still present. A reminder of every way she'd been broken and every way she'd healed. I can't go back, she said. Not to Nate, to herself, to the universe, to whatever God had abandoned her. I can't. I'd rather die. It won't come to that. You don't know that. Then we make sure it doesn't. She stopped pacing, turned to face him. How do we fight a system that says I'm not capable of making my own decisions? How do I prove I'm sane when the very act of being here with you is evidence they'll use against me? You tell the truth. You show them who you are. And if that's not enough, then we leave. Tonight. We ride north, cross into Canada, start over where no one knows us. Ruth stared at him. You'd do that? Leave everything. I've already lost everything that mattered. This ranch, this land, it's just dirt and wood. You're the first real thing I've felt in 4 years, so yeah, I'd leave it all. Nate. But I don't think we'll have to, because I think when that judge sees you, really sees you, he'll understand. You have too much faith in people. Maybe. Or maybe you don't have enough faith in yourself. Ruth wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. She'd spent so long being told she was worthless that she'd started to believe it. Even now, free and healing part of her still heard her father's voice calling her useless, her mother's silence confirming it, her brother's laughter reinforcing it. I don't know how to have faith in myself, she admitted. Then borrow mine until you find your own. That week passed in a strange suspension. They worked the ranch together, but everything felt temporary, like they were waiting for a storm to hit. Ruth threw herself into learning everything she could, not just household tasks, but ranch management. She studied Nate's ledgers, asked questions about cattle prices and land values and market trends. Her mind, starved for stimulation for so long, soaked up information like drought-parched earth, soaking up rain. You're good at this, Nate said one evening, watching her calculate feed costs faster than he could with pencil and paper. Numbers make sense. They don't lie or change their minds. You could run this place yourself. I thought I already was, she said with a hint of a smile. Smart mouth. You prefer stupid. I prefer you. The words hung between them heavier than he'd intended. Ruth's smile faded. She set down her pencil. Nate, what are we doing? What do you mean? This, us, living together, working together. People talk. You heard them in town. They think I'm your mistress, or your charity case, or both. Let them think what they want. But what is this really? Nate struggled for words. What were they not married? Not courting exactly. Not just employer and employee. Something undefined that existed in the space between. We're partners, he said finally. Building something together. Whatever that becomes, we'll figure it out as we go. That's not much of an answer. It's the only honest one I've got. Ruth nodded slowly. Okay. Partners. I can live with that. But both of them knew it wasn't quite true. Something was shifting between them, slow and inevitable, as seasons changing. Neither knew what to call it yet. The night before the hearing, Ruth couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, counting the knots in the wood planks. 47. She'd counted them 100 times. Around midnight, she heard Nate's door open. Footsteps crossing to the kitchen. The pump working, water running. She got up, wrapped a shawl around her nightgown, and found him standing at the window glass of water, untouched, in his hand. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. He turned, started to see her. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I've been awake since sunset." They stood in the darkness, neither speaking. Outside, the moon was nearly full, painting everything silver. "I keep thinking about Sarah," Nate said finally. "The night she died. She knew it was coming. The fever was too high. The bleeding wouldn't stop. And she took my hand and said, 'Promise me you'll find joy again.' Not happiness. Joy. She was specific about that. What's the difference? Happiness is fleeting. Joy is deeper, lasting. Even when things are hard, joy exists underneath. Did you promise? I did. And then I spent 4 years not keeping that promise." Ruth moved to stand beside him at the window. Their shoulders nearly touched. "And now I think maybe I'm starting to. Because of you." "Don't put that on me, Nate. I can't carry the weight of your healing." "I'm not asking you to. I'm just grateful. That's all." Ruth leaned her head against his shoulder. The gesture was intimate but not romantic. Just two people finding comfort in proximity. "I'm scared," she whispered. "About tomorrow, about losing this, about going back." "You won't. You can't know that." "Then I'll choose to believe it anyway. And you should too." Faith again. Faith again. They stood there until dawn started to gray the sky. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Just two souls standing together against the coming storm. The courthouse in Copper Bend was packed. Every gossip and gawker in the territory had shown up. Ruth walked in with Nate on one side, Tobias on the other. She wore her blue dress, the one Nate had bought her, and held her head high, even though her stomach was churning. Her family sat on the other side. Her father in his Sunday suit, looking righteous and wronged. Her mother pale and silent, Ezekiel smirking. Their lawyer Pritchard was a small, oily man with slicked hair and calculating eyes. Judge Harrison entered and everyone stood. He was older than Ruth expected, maybe 60, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen everything. "This is a hearing regarding custody of Ruth Harper," he announced. "Mr. Pritchard, state your case." Pritchard stood all false concern and practiced sympathy. "Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Ms. Harper is a young woman with a physical disability who requires family care. Her father, in a moment of financial desperation, made a regrettable decision to sell her labor contract. But blood is blood. Family is family. Mr. Bennett, a wealthy rancher, purchased this contract without family consent. We contend that Ms. Harper, due to her unsound situation and questionable living arrangements, should be returned to family custody for her own protection." "Unsound situation?" the judge asked. "Living unmarried with a man, Your Honor. Evidence suggests Ms. Harper lacks the judgment necessary for independent living." The courtroom murmured. Ruth's hands clenched in her lap. "Mr. Bennett," the judge said, "your response." Nate stood, and Ruth was struck by how solid he looked, unshakable. "Your Honor, I purchased Miss Harper's contract legally from Silas Turnbull, who had it legally from her father. The contract is valid. As for unsound situation, Miss Harper has her own room in my cabin, does honest work, and is free to leave whenever she chooses. There's nothing improper about our arrangement." "Except that you're unmarried?" Pritchard interjected. "Except that she lives under your roof, subject to your influence." "I'm subject to no one's influence," Ruth said, voice cutting through the noise. The courtroom went silent. Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. Miss Harper, you'll have a chance to speak. I'm speaking now, Ruth said, standing. Nate tried to pull her back down, but she shook him off. You're all talking about me like I'm not here, like I'm a piece of furniture to be moved around. I'm done with that. Miss Harper, my father sold me because I was inconvenient, because my burned hand reminded him of his failure to protect his children, because keeping me fed and clothed was too much trouble. Mr. Turnbull beat me. I have scars to prove it. And Mr. Bennett? Her voice caught. Mr. Bennett gave me the first choice I've had in my entire life, to stay or to go, to work or to rest, to speak or to be silent. That's not improper. That's human decency. Pritchard stood. Your Honor, this outburst proves my point. Miss Harper is clearly emotional unstable. I'm angry, Ruth shot back. There's a difference. And I have every right to be angry at a system that says I need a man's permission to exist. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered, others shouted her down. The judge banged his gavel. Order! I'll have order, or I'll clear this room. Silence fell. Ruth remained standing, chest-heaving, gray eyes blazing. Judge Harrison studied her for a long moment. Miss Harper, you say you were beaten by Mr. Turnbull. Can you prove this? Ruth held up her burned hand, then unwrapped the cloth she'd kept over it. The scars were old, but on her wrist, new bruises still purple and yellow. These are from where he grabbed me. Mrs. Turnbull can testify. We have Mrs. Turnbull here, Tobias said, standing. She's prepared to testify. Pritchard looked nervous. Your Honor, Mrs. Turnbull's testimony is suspect. She has reason to— I'll decide what's suspect, Harrison snapped. Mrs. Turnbull approach. Margaret Turnbull came forward, shaking but determined. She placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Tell me about Miss Harper's time at the trading post, Harrison said. Margaret's voice was quiet but steady. My husband beat her. First night she was there, she dropped a plate. He hit her across the face, left a mark. It wasn't the only time. Why didn't you report this? Because he hits me too, Your Honor. And I knew if I said anything, it'd only get worse. But when Mr. Bennett offered to buy her contract, offered me land in my name alone, I took the chance. For her and for me. The courtroom was silent now. Even Pritchard had nothing to say. Your Honor. Tobias stood. I've known Nathaniel Bennett for 15 years. He's honorable, and Miss Harper has done nothing but work hard and mind her own business. This case is about control, not care. Her father wants money, not his daughter. That's a lie. Malachi shot to his feet. I want my daughter safe. Then why did you sell her? Ruth's voice rang out. Why did you take $50 for your own child? Why didn't you protect me when Turnbull hit me? Why didn't you care when I was bleeding? You're my property, my daughter, you owe me. I owe you nothing. Ruth was shaking now. You gave up any claim to me the day you decided I was worth less than the price of a lame horse. Malachi lunged toward her. Ezekiel grabbed him. The courtroom erupted again. Nate moved between Ruth and her father, hand on his belt, where his gun would have been if weapons were allowed in court. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked like thunder. Sit down, all of you now. Everyone froze. Slowly, people returned to their seats. Ruth was breathing hard, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of weakness. Tears of rage, of grief, of everything she'd held back for too long. Harrison looked at her with something that might have been respect. Miss Harper, in your own words, what do you want? Ruth wiped her eyes with her burned hand. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. I want to be free, to make my own choices, to work where I choose, to live where I choose. I want the law to recognize that I'm a human being, not property to be bought and sold. I want my father to leave me alone. And I want— Her voice broke. I just want to be seen as I am, capable, whole, worth something beyond what I can do for other people. The silence that followed was absolute. Harrison sat back in his chair, stroking his beard. Minutes passed. Ruth remained standing, refusing to sit, refusing to back down. Finally, the judge spoke. "I've heard enough. The contract between Mr. Harper and Mr. Turnbull was legal, but morally questionable. The contract between Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Bennett was legal, and given the testimony about abuse, arguably humanitarian. Miss Harper has demonstrated sound mind and clear judgment. She's articulate, intelligent, and capable of self-determination." Pritchard started to object. Harrison held up a hand. "I'm not finished. Mr. Harper, you sold your daughter. Whatever your reasons, whatever your justifications, you made a choice that put her in danger. That's not the action of a protective father. That's the action of a man who saw his child as a burden to be rid of." Malachi's face went purple. "Your Honor, I'm still not finished. The contract is void. Miss Harper is a free citizen with full rights and privileges. The petition for family custody is denied. Furthermore, Mr. Harper, if you approach Miss Harper again for any reason, I'll have you arrested for harassment. Am I clear? This is an outrage. Am I clear?" Malachi's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded, once sharp and angry. "Good. This hearing is concluded." The gavel fell. For a moment, Ruth couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then Nate's hand found hers, and the world rushed back in. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she corrected. Outside, the sun was shining. Spring had finally arrived, warm and full of promise. Ruth stood on the courthouse steps, face turned to the sky, and laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was rusty from disuse, but genuine. "What's funny?" Nate asked. "I'm free. I'm actually free." "You were always free, just took a judge to make it official." Ruth turned to him, gray eyes bright with tears that weren't sad. "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. For standing beside me. For teaching me to believe I was worth fighting for. You did the hard part. I just held the door open." That's more than anyone else ever did. They started walking toward the wagon. Behind them, Ruth heard her mother's voice. "Ruth, wait." Ruth stopped, turned. Martha Harper stood there, smaller than Ruth remembered, worn down by years of silence and surrender. "Mama, I'm sorry." Martha's voice was barely a whisper. "I should have protected you. Should have stood up to him. Should have done a lot of things," Ruth said. "Not cruel, just honest. But you didn't. I was afraid. So was I. But I fought anyway." Martha's face crumpled. "Can you forgive me?" Ruth thought about it. Really thought. About all the years of silence, all the times her mother had looked away, all the moments when a word of support could have changed everything. "Maybe someday," Ruth said finally. "But not today. Today I need to be angry. Today I need to remember that love isn't just words. It's action. And you never acted." Ruth. "Goodbye, Mama." Ruth walked away, didn't look back, felt the weight of her mother's gaze on her shoulders, but didn't turn around. Some bridges you had to burn to move forward. In the wagon, she and Nate rode in silence. The valley stretched around them, green and alive with spring growth. Wildflowers dotted the hills. The creek ran high with snowmelt. Everything felt new. "You okay?" Nate asked finally. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." They rode a while longer. Then Ruth said, "She wanted me to forgive her. On the spot. Like 9 years of neglect could be erased with an apology." "That's not how it works." "No, it's not. But part of me wanted to say yes. Wanted to make it easy for her. That's the part that scares me. The part that still wants their approval even after everything. That's human. Doesn't make you weak." "Feels weak." It's not. It takes strength to walk away from people who hurt you, especially when they're family. Ruth leaned her head back, watching clouds drift across the sky. "Do you think I'm hard for not forgiving her?" "I think you're honest. And I think you're protecting yourself. That's not hard. That's smart." What if I never forgive them? Then you don't. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, Ruth. You don't owe them peace of mind. She nodded slowly. It helped hearing him say it. Helped to know that holding on to her anger wasn't a character flaw, but a form of self-preservation. They reached the ranch as the sun started to set. The cabin looked golden in the fading light, solid and safe and home. Ruth climbed down from the wagon and stood for a moment, just looking at it. "I want to stay," she said. "Not because I have nowhere else to go. Not because you saved me. Because I choose to. Is that okay?" "More than okay. As partners." "As partners." She smiled then, real and warm and unguarded. "Good, because I've got plans for this place. Big plans, and you're going to need my help to pull them off." "That's so. That's so. Starting with proper bookkeeping. Your ledgers are a disaster." Nate laughed, the sound bright and surprised. "Anything else?" "Oh, plenty. But we'll start there." They went inside together, and for the first time since he'd brought her here, Ruth felt like she truly belonged. Not as a guest, not as someone rescued, but as an equal partner in building something that mattered. That night they sat by the fire and Nate taught Ruth to play chess. She beat him 3 games out of 5. "You're a natural," he said, impressed. "Or you're a terrible teacher." "Could be both." Ruth studied the board, then looked up at him. "Nate, what happens now?" "What do you mean?" "The hearing's over. I'm free. We could go our separate ways, if you wanted." His hand stilled over a chess piece. "Is that what you want?" "No. But I need to know it's what you want too. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because you choose it." Nate met her eyes across the board. "I choose it. I choose you. I choose this. Every day, Ruth. For as long as you'll have me." Ruth's breath caught. It wasn't a declaration of love. Not yet. But it was a promise. And that was worth more than any romantic gesture. "Okay," she whispered. "Then we keep building. Together. Together." They finished their game. Ruth won again. And somewhere in the quiet of that evening, with fire crackling and wind whispering outside, they both realized they'd found something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Not salvation, not rescue, just partnership, just choice, just the radical act of being seen and choosing to stay anyway. And for now, that was enough. Spring turned to summer with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and the work harder. Ruth woke before dawn most days, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. There was something about the quiet morning hours that belonged to her alone before the day demanded anything. Before Nate woke, and they fell into their routine of partnership. She'd taken over the ranch books completely now. Nate hadn't argued, just handed them over one evening with a look of relief that made her laugh. The ledgers had been a mess, entries half-finished, calculations, wrong debts recorded but never followed up on. It took her 3 weeks to sort through the chaos and another week to set up a proper system. "You're losing money on the feed contract," she told him one morning over breakfast. Nate looked up from his eggs. "What?" "The supplier in town. He's been overcharging you for 2 years. Look." She pushed the ledger across the table, pointed to the numbers. "Market rate for hay is $12 a ton. He's charging you $15. That's just Miller's price, always has been." "It's robbery is what it is. I checked with the freight office. Hay comes in from the same place everyone else gets theirs. There's no reason his should cost more except that he knows you won't question it." Nate studied the numbers, then looked at her with something close to awe. "How did you figure this out?" "I asked questions. Talked to the freight manager, the other ranchers' wives at church. People tell you things if you listen." "We need to renegotiate." "Already did. Told Miller you'd take your business to the supplier in Red Creek unless he matched their rate. He agreed this morning." Nate sat back in his chair. "You did all that without asking me." Ruth's confidence faltered. "I'm sorry. I should have—" "No, don't apologize. I'm just impressed, and a little intimidated. Intimidated. You've been here 3 months and you run this place better than I have in 4 years. That's not true. It is, and I'm grateful for it. He paused. How much are we saving on the feed? $3 a ton. With what we use, that's about $150 a year. Nate whistled low. That's not nothing. No, it's not. And there are other places we're bleeding money. The blacksmith, the seed supplier, the Ruth. Stop. He was smiling. I believe you. Fix whatever needs fixing. You've got my full trust. Those words settled into Ruth's chest like stones in a foundation. Trust. She'd earned it, and that meant more than any compliment. But with the success came attention. The town had mostly left them alone after the hearing, but now people were noticing. Ruth Harper wasn't just the girl who'd been sold. She was the woman who was making Bennett's ranch profitable again. That made her interesting. And in small towns, interesting meant threatening. The trouble started at church. Ruth had been going with Nate most Sundays, sitting in the back, keeping quiet. But this particular Sunday, the Reverend's wife, Agnes Pritchard, married to the lawyer who'd tried to destroy Ruth in court, decided to make things difficult. They were having tea after the service. Women gathered in the church hall, while the men talked outside. Ruth stood by herself, cup in hand, not quite part of the group, but not quite separate either. Agnes approached with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Harper, how nice to see you. Mrs. Pritchard, I heard you've been helping Mr. Bennett with his accounts. How industrious of you. I do what I can. I'm sure you do. Agnes's voice dropped just loud enough for the nearby women to hear. Though some might say it's improper for an unmarried woman to be so involved in a man's business affairs. Ruth's jaw tightened. Some might say a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. I'm only concerned for your reputation, dear. People talk, you know. Let them talk. I've got nothing to hide. Don't you? Agnes's smile sharpened. Living under his roof unmarried, managing his finances. Some might wonder what other services you provide. The room went quiet. Every woman was listening now, pretending not to, but hanging on every word. Ruth set down her teacup with deliberate care. When she spoke, her voice was clear and carrying. Mrs. Pritchard, I'm going to say this once, and I hope you'll listen carefully. I work for my keep. I earn my place. And if that threatens you or anyone else here, that's your problem, not mine. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a ranch to help run. She walked out with her head high, ignoring the whispers that erupted behind her. Nate found her outside, leaning against the wagon, breathing hard. What happened? Agnes Pritchard happened. What did she say? Ruth told him. Nate's face darkened with each word. I'll talk to her husband. No, don't. Ruth grabbed his arm. That's what she wants. She wants you to defend me, to make a scene, to prove that I can't handle things myself. I won't give her that satisfaction. Ruth, she can't just... She can. And she will. And so will others, because I'm different. I don't fit in their boxes. I work with numbers and speak my mind and live by my own rules. That scares them. It shouldn't have to be this hard. But it is, and I'm strong enough to handle it. Nate studied her face, saw the set of her jaw, the fire in her eyes. You are, aren't you, strong enough? Getting there. They rode home in silence. But that night, Nate found Ruth in the barn, brushing down the horses with more force than necessary. Her burned hand gripped the brush awkwardly, but she didn't stop. You don't have to prove anything to them, he said. I'm not proving anything to them. I'm proving it to me. You've already proven it. You won in court. You're free. Free legally. But they still look at me like I'm property. Like I'm something that happened to you instead of someone you chose to work with. Their opinions don't matter. They do when they affect business. They do when they make you choose between me and your reputation. Nate moved closer. I'm not choosing. You're part of this ranch now. Anyone who has a problem with that can take their business elsewhere. You'll lose customers. I'll find new ones. Nate. I mean it, Ruth. I spent 4 years not caring about anything. You gave me a reason to care again. I'm not giving that up because some small-minded people can't handle a woman who's good with numbers. Ruth's eyes burned. She turned away, kept brushing the horse. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because it makes me hope, and hope is dangerous. So is living without it. She stopped brushing. Her shoulders shook just slightly. Nate realized she was crying. He moved closer, uncertain, then carefully put his hand on her shoulder. Hey, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, everything's right. That's the problem. I keep waiting for it to fall apart. For you to realize this was a mistake. For something to go wrong. Because good things don't last. Not for people like me. People like you. Broken people. Sold people. People who were told their whole lives they weren't worth keeping. Nate turned her around, gentle but firm. Her face was wet with tears, her gray eyes red-rimmed. You're not broken. You're the strongest person I know. And you're worth keeping. You're worth fighting for. You're worth... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Worth what? She whispered. Everything. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Neither was quite ready to name. Ruth's breath hitched. Nate's hand was still on her shoulder, warm and steady. For a moment, they just stood there, close enough that she could feel his heartbeat, fast and uncertain as her own. Then she stepped back. I need to finish with the horses. Right. Yeah. I'll be inside. He left quickly, and Ruth pressed her forehead against the horse's neck, breathing in the familiar smell of hay and animal warmth. What was happening between them? Partnership had shifted into something else. Something neither had asked for, but both were circling around like wary animals. She wasn't ready for it. Wasn't ready to risk her heart on another person who could break it. But God help her, she was starting to want to. The next few weeks were strange. They worked together as always, but there was a new awareness between them. Hands that brushed when passing tools. Glances that lasted too long. Conversations that stopped just short of saying what they both felt. Nate started finding excuses to be near her. Ruth started taking more care with her appearance, pinning her hair nicer, wearing the blue dress more often. Neither acknowledged what was happening. Both were terrified of naming it. Then came the night of the storm. Late July heat that had been building for days finally broke in a fury of thunder and lightning. Rain came down in sheets, turning the yard to mud. Nate was out checking the horses when a crack of lightning hit close enough to shake the ground. One of the mares panicked, broke through the corral fence, and bolted toward the creek. Ruth saw it from the window. Saw Nate run after the horse in the pouring rain. Saw him slip in the mud. Saw him get up, limping. Without thinking, she grabbed a rope and ran out after him. Ruth, go back. Not without you. The mare was at the creek, wild-eyed and snorting. The water was rising fast, rushing with the kind of force that could sweep away anything in its path. Nate approached slowly, talking in a low, calm voice. Ruth circled around, the other side, rope ready. Lightning flashed again. Thunder rolled. The mare reared, and for a terrible moment, Ruth thought she'd bolt straight into the flooded creek. But Nate caught her halter, held on, even when she dragged him through the mud. Ruth threw the rope around the mare's neck, pulled tight, and together they brought her under control. By the time they got back to the barn, all three were soaked and muddy and breathing hard. Nate secured the mare in a stall, checked her over for injuries. Ruth collapsed against the wall, hair plastered to her face, dress ruined. You shouldn't have come out, Nate said, not looking at her. You needed help. You could have been hurt. So could you. That's different. Why? Because you're a man and I'm a woman. Because you're the one who's supposed to take all the risks. Because I can't lose you. The words exploded out of him. He turned to face her, eyes wild. "I can't lose you, Ruth. Not like I lost Sarah. Not like I lost Emma. I can't." His voice broke. Ruth stood, frozen water dripping from her clothes, heart pounding. "Nate, I know we said partners. I know we're supposed to keep this simple. But it's not simple anymore. Not for me. And I need you to know that before something happens, and I never get the chance to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That you matter. That somewhere along the way, you stopped being someone I helped, and started being someone I—" He stopped, jaw working. "Someone you what?" "Someone I can't imagine living without." Ruth's breath left her in a rush. She crossed the space between them in 3 steps and grabbed the front of his wet shirt. "Don't say that unless you mean it. Don't give me hope unless you're sure." "I'm sure." "Because I'm scared, Nate. I'm terrified. I've never had anything good that didn't get taken away. And if I let myself love you, if I let myself believe this is real and it falls apart, it'll destroy me." "Then we don't let it fall apart. You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise to fight for it. Every day. For as long as you'll let me." Ruth stared up at him, water dripping down her face, hair a mess dress, clinging to her like a second skin. She'd never felt more vulnerable. Never felt more seen. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." She laughed, a broken, watery sound. "That seems to be our solution for everything. It's worked so far." "Nate, I'm serious. I don't know how to be loved. I don't know how to trust that it won't be taken away. I don't know how to be anything except useful, and that's not enough for—" He kissed her. Not rough, not desperate, just sure. His hands cupped her face, thumbs, brushing away water and tears, and he kissed her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. When he pulled back, Ruth was shaking. "Oh. Yeah. Oh. We can't. People will—" "I don't care about people. Do you—" She thought about Agnes Pritchard, about the whispers, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about the ledgers she'd fixed, the respect she'd earned, the life she was building on her own terms. "No," she said finally. "I don't." "Good. Then we do this our way. No rules except the ones we make. What if I'm terrible at it, at being whatever this is? Then you'll be terrible at it with me. And we'll figure it out. Together." There was that word again. Together. It had become their anchor, their promise, their answer to every fear. Ruth kissed him this time, standing on her toes, burned, hand gripping his shoulder. Good hand tangled in his wet hair. She kissed him like she was claiming something that had always been meant to be hers. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nate rested his forehead against hers. "We should get inside. You're freezing." "I don't care." "Ruth, I've been cold my whole life, Nate. This is the first time I've felt warm." His arms came around her, then pulling her close, and they stood there in the barn, with rain pounding on the roof and lightning flashing outside, just holding each other. No promises of forever. No declarations of eternal love. Just 2 people choosing each other in this moment and the next, and the one after that. Eventually, they did go inside. Ruth changed into dry clothes while Nate built up the fire. They sat together on the floor in front of the hearth, wrapped in quilts, watching the flames. "What happens now?" Ruth asked. "Same as before. We work. We build. We figure things out." "But different." "But different," he agreed. Do you want to get married?" Nate was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to get married?" "I don't know. I said I wouldn't. That it was just trading one cage for another." "It doesn't have to be. We could draw up papers. Make sure you have rights, property, independence. Make it a real partnership in the eyes of the law." "That's not how marriage works. It's how our marriage would work." Ruth turned to look at him. "You've thought about this?" "Some, since the hearing. Since I realized you weren't leaving. And you'd really do that." Give me equal rights property in my name. Ruth, half this ranch is already yours in everything but paper. You've earned it, and I trust you with it more than I trust myself. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. He laughed. I'm terrible at this. No, you're perfect at it, because you see me, really see me, not as someone to save or fix or protect, but as an equal. You are my equal, in every way that matters. Ruth leaned her head on his shoulder. Ask me again in a month, when we're both sure this isn't just storm feelings. Storm feelings. You know, heat of the moment, adrenaline, fear of loss. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what I think. I just know I need time to be sure. Because if we do this, I want it to be real. Not convenient, not safe, but real. Nate kissed the top of her head. A month. I can do a month. And if you change your mind, I won't. But if you do tell me, don't just let me believe something that isn't true. I can handle rejection. I can't handle lies. I promise, no lies, even when the truth is hard. Especially when the truth is hard. They fell asleep there by the fire, tangled together in quilts and new understanding. When Ruth woke in the morning, Nate was already up making coffee. He handed her a cup and sat beside her. Morning. Morning. She sipped the coffee. Still terrible. She smiled. We need to work on your brewing. Add it to the list of things you're teaching me. They went about their day as normal. Feeding animals, checking fences, working on accounts. But everything felt different. There were touches now, casual and frequent. His hand on her back when he passed behind her. Her fingers brushing his when she handed him tools. Small intimacies that spoke of change, of choosing, of becoming something more. The town noticed, of course. Within a week, everyone knew that Nate and Ruth were courting. The gossip reached new heights. Some women were scandalized. Some were envious. Some, surprisingly, were pleased. About time, Eliza Morrison said when Ruth came into the general store. Eliza was old, maybe 70, and had never cared what anyone thought. Man's been half dead for years. You brought him back to life. That's worth celebrating. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. You gonna marry him? Maybe. We're taking it slow. Don't take it too slow. Life's short. I lost my Henry when I was 43, spent the next 30 years wishing I'd kissed him more, argued less. Don't make my mistakes, girl. Ruth carried those words home like treasures. Kissed him more, argued less. It sounded simple. It wasn't. But maybe it could be. That night she and Nate sat on the porch watching stars emerge. The summer air was finally cooling after weeks of heat. Crickets sang in the grass. Somewhere a coyote called lonely and wild. Eliza Morrison told me not to take too long deciding, Ruth said. She's a wise woman. She also said life's short. It is. So what if we're wasting time being careful? Nate turned to look at her. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we don't need a month. Maybe we already know. Ruth, I love you. The words came out rushed, scared but true. I think I have for a while. I was just too afraid to say it. Too afraid it would give you power over me. But staying silent doesn't protect me. It just keeps me small. And I'm done being small. Nate took her burned hand, the one she usually hid, and brought it to his lips. He kissed each scarred finger, each ridge of damaged tissue. I love you too. Have since the day you told Agnes Pritchard off in the church hall, maybe even before. That's what did it. My temper. Your strength, your refusal to back down, your absolute certainty that you deserved better. I'd been dead inside for so long, and then there you were fighting for your life like it mattered, like you mattered, and I thought, that's who I want to be, someone who fights. You fought for me at the hearing. You fought for yourself. I just stood beside you. Is that what marriage would be, standing beside each other? That's exactly what it would be. Ruth was quiet for a long time thinking. Then she said, I want my own bank account, and property in my name, and the right to work if I choose, and I want it written down legal so no one can take it away. Done. And I want to keep my name, Ruth Harper, not Ruth Bennett. Nate hesitated. That'll cause talk. I don't care. I've been sold twice, Nate. Once by my father, once by Turnbull. I'm not losing my name too. It's the only thing that's always been mine. Okay. Ruth Harper it is. You're sure? I'm sure you're worth more than tradition. Ruth smiled real and bright. Then yes. Ask me properly and I'll say yes. Nate stood, pulled her to her feet. He didn't kneel, didn't make a show of it. Just took both her hands, burned and whole, and looked her in the eye. Ruth Harper, will you marry me? Will you be my partner in all things? Will you build this life with me as equals, for as long as we both choose it? Yes, she said. Yes to all of it. He kissed her then, and somewhere in the darkness an owl called. The stars wheeled overhead. The land stretched out around them vast and full of possibility. And two people who'd been broken by life found themselves whole in each other, not because they'd been saved, but because they'd chosen to save themselves. Together. The engagement lasted exactly 2 weeks before Ruth realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Not about marrying Nate. About thinking the world would let them be happy without extracting a price first. It started with Tobias riding up to the ranch at dawn, his face grim in a way that made Ruth's stomach drop even before he spoke. Nate was in the barn. She was feeding chickens, scattering grain with her good hand, while her burned one hung useless at her side. Some mornings it ached worse than others. This was one of those mornings. Ruth, Tobias said, dismounting heavy. Need to talk to both of you. What's wrong? Just get Nate, please. She found him mucking stalls, and the look on her face made him drop the pitchfork immediately. They came back together, Ruth's hand finding his without conscious thought. Physical touch was still new between them, still startling and precious. Tobias stood by his horse hat in hands. There's been talk about the engagement, about the arrangements you're planning. What kind of talk? Nate's voice went flat, dangerous. Pritchard's saying you're trying to circumvent the natural order, that giving Ruth property rights and legal independence sets a bad precedent. He's got some of the town council worked up about it. The town council can go to hell, Ruth said. I agree, but they're talking about blocking the marriage license, on grounds of, they're calling it contractual irregularity. Saying a marriage that doesn't follow traditional property laws isn't valid. That's not a real law, Nate said. No, but they're the ones who approve licenses. And if they decide not to issue one, we'd have to go to the territorial capital to fight it. That's a month's journey, maybe more. Ruth felt something cold settle into her chest. Of course. Of course they couldn't just be happy. Of course someone had to try to take it away. So what do we do? She asked, voice steadier than she felt. You could agree to a traditional marriage, standard property arrangements. Wife's assets go to husband, that kind of thing. No, Ruth and Nate said at the same time. Tobias nodded like he'd expected that. Then we fight. I'll file papers with the territorial court. But it'll take time, and money. And there's no guarantee we'll win. We'll win, Nate said. We have to. Why? Ruth's voice was small. Why do we have to fight so hard just to exist the way we want? Because the world's not built for people like us, Tobias said gently. People who challenge how things have always been done. But that's also why you have to fight. Because if you don't, nothing ever changes. After he left, Ruth stood in the yard, staring at nothing. Nate came up behind her, hands on her shoulders. We'll figure this out. Will we? Or will we just keep fighting forever, one battle after another, never getting to just live? Ruth. I'm tired, Nate. I'm so tired of fighting. Fought my family, fought Turnbull, fought the court, and now I have to fight just to marry you the way we want. When does it end? When we make it end." She turned to face him. What if it never ends? What if this is just how it is? What if choosing each other means choosing a lifetime of other people trying to tear us down? Then we hold on to each other and don't let them. That's not enough. It has to be, because the alternative is giving up. And I know you, Ruth Harper, you don't give up. Maybe I should. Maybe it would hurt less. Nate's jaw tightened. You don't mean that. Don't I? What have I gained, really? Freedom that everyone questions. Work that people call improper. Love that has to be defended and justified and fought for. Sometimes I wonder if being sold to Turnbull would have been easier. At least then I'd know exactly how much I was worth. $50? Nate said, voice hard. That's what your father thought you were worth. You think that's better than this? At least it was honest. At least no one pretended it was anything but a transaction. Is that what you think we are? A transaction? I don't know what we are anymore. I thought I did, but now I'm not sure. Nate stepped back like she'd struck him. You're not sure about us. I'm not sure about anything. I'm not sure I'm strong enough for this. I'm not sure I can keep fighting every single day just to have what other people take for granted. I'm not sure. Her voice broke. I'm not sure I deserve any of this. Ruth, don't. Don't tell me I'm strong. Don't tell me I'm worth it. Because right now, I don't believe you. She walked away, leaving him standing there. Went to the cabin and shut the door and lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling, counted the knots in the wood. 47. Always 47. Some things never changed. Nate didn't follow her. He knew her well enough by now to know when she needed space. Instead, he went back to the barn and worked himself into exhaustion, mucking every stall repairing tack that didn't need repairing anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from spiraling. They'd been so close to having something good, something real. And now Ruth was pulling away, and he didn't know how to stop it. Didn't know if he should try. Maybe she was right. Maybe loving him meant a lifetime of fighting, and maybe she'd already fought enough. But God, he didn't want to lose her. Didn't want to go back to the empty half-life he'd been living before she walked through his door. She'd woken something in him, something he'd thought died with Sarah and Emma. Hope, maybe. Or just the willingness to feel anything at all. That night they ate dinner in silence. Ruth picked at her food. Nate pretended to read. The space between them felt vast as a canyon. I'm sorry, Ruth said finally, for what I said, about us being a transaction. You were upset. I was cruel. There's a difference. Ruth, if you're having doubts, I'm not about you. About everything else, yes. But not about you. Nate set down his book. Then what's really wrong? She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was small. What if we win the fight and get married, and then you realize I'm not enough, that the trouble I bring isn't worth it? What if you wake up one day and wish you'd chosen someone easier? There is no one easier. And I don't want easier. I want you. But why I'm difficult and damaged, and I come with more baggage than a freight train. You could have anyone, Nate. Someone young and pretty and whole. Someone who doesn't flinch when you touch her burned hand. Someone who doesn't wake up at night from dreams about being sold. Why choose me? Because you're real. Because you see me, not my money or my land or what I can give you. Because you challenge me and frustrate me and make me want to be better. Because when I look at you, I don't see someone broken. I see someone who refused to stay broken. That's not baggage, Ruth. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like barely holding on. Then hold on to me, and I'll hold on to you. And maybe together we're stronger than we are apart. Ruth's eyes filled. What if I let you down? You won't. You don't know that. I know you. That's enough." She got up, moved to where he sat, and climbed into his lap like a child seeking comfort. He wrapped his arms around her, and she buried her face in his shoulder and cried. Not delicate tears. Big, ugly, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. He held her through it. Didn't tell her to stop. Didn't try to fix it. Just held her and let her break because sometimes breaking was the only way to heal properly. When she finally quieted, she stayed where she was exhausted and raw. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. What if they win? What if they block the marriage and we have to fight for years and we lose anyway? Then we live together without the paper. I don't need a license to know you're mine and I'm yours. But I wanted the paper. I wanted the legal protection. And we'll get it, one way or another, even if we have to go to the territorial capital. Even if it takes years. We'll get it. Promise. I promise." She pulled back to look at him. Her face was blotchy eyes, red hair a mess. She'd never looked more beautiful to him. "I love you," she said. "Even when I'm difficult and scared and pushing you away. I love you. I love you too. Even when you're being stubborn and impossible and testing every bit of my patience." She almost smiled. "We're quite a pair. We are, and I wouldn't change a thing." They stayed like that for a while, just holding each other. Then Ruth said, "We should probably eat. Food's getting cold." Probably. But neither moved. Some things were more important than food. The next morning, Ruth woke with a clarity she hadn't felt in days. She found Nate in the kitchen making his terrible coffee. "I want to fight," she said. He turned surprised. "What?" "I want to fight the town council. I want to go to the Capitol if we have to. I want to make them see that what we're doing, building a partnership based on equality that matters. Not just for us. For every woman who comes after me. Ruth, you don't have to." "I do. Because you were right. If I don't fight, nothing changes. And I'm tired of letting other people decide what I'm worth." A slow smile spread across Nate's face. There she is. There's the woman who told off a judge. She was sleeping. Had to wake her up. "I'm glad you did." They spent the next week preparing their case. Ruth organized documents, wrote statements, compiled evidence of her competence. Nate hired a lawyer from the Capitol, a woman named Catherine Blake, who specialized in property rights and had a reputation for winning impossible cases. Catherine arrived on a Tuesday, tall and sharp-eyed, and carrying more books than seemed possible for one person. She set up in Nate's office and spent 2 days reviewing everything. "This is good," she said finally. "You've got a strong case, but I need to be honest with you both. This isn't just about marriage law. This is about power. About who gets to make decisions. The men on that council, they see what you're proposing, and they see their own wives getting ideas. That's what they're really fighting." "So what do we do?" Ruth asked. "We make them more afraid of losing than of change. We show them that blocking your marriage opens them up to lawsuits, bad publicity, federal intervention. We make fighting you more trouble than it's worth." "That sounds manipulative," Nate said. "It is. That's how you win." Catherine looked at Ruth. "But I need to know you're ready for this. It's going to get ugly. They'll dig into your past. They'll bring up your father Turnbull everything. They'll try to paint you as unstable or immoral or both. Can you handle that?" Ruth thought about all she'd survived, being sold, being beaten, standing in court while her father called her property. If she could handle that, she could handle this. "Yes," she said. "I can handle it." "Good. Then let's destroy them." The hearing was set for 3 weeks later in the territorial capital. Helena was a 2-day ride longer if the weather turned. Nate arranged for Miguel to watch the ranch. Ruth packed carefully, including the ledgers that proved her competence and letters of reference from townspeople who supported them. Tobias rode with them, his presence a comfort and a reminder that they weren't alone in this fight. Helena was bigger than Ruth expected, with real streets and buildings made of brick instead of wood. The courthouse was imposing 3 stories of stone and glass that seemed designed to make people feel small. Scared? Nate asked as they stood outside. Terrified. Good. Means you care. That's supposed to be comforting. Is it working? Not even a little. He kissed her forehead. You've got this. You were born for this fight. Inside the courtroom was packed. Word had spread. This wasn't just about one couple anymore. It was about precedent, about what women could own and control, about whether the law would evolve or stay frozen in tradition. The territorial judge was a woman, which surprised everyone. Judge Elizabeth Cartwright, 60 years old, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She banged her gavel once, and the room fell silent. I've reviewed the petition, she said. Mr. Bennett and Miss Harper seek a marriage license with non-traditional property arrangements. The Copper Bend Town Council has blocked this license on grounds of irregularity. Miss Blake, state your case. Catherine stood every inch the professional. Your Honor, my clients seek only what the law already allows the right to contract. Marriage is a contract. The terms of that contract, as long as they're legal and consensual, are up to the parties involved. Copper Bend's refusal to issue a license is an overreach of authority. The council's lawyer stood. It was Pritchard, looking smug. Your Honor, marriage isn't just a contract. It's a sacred institution with established norms. Allowing women to retain property undermines the family structure. Miss Harper's history being sold by her father working for Mr. Bennett in questionable circumstances raises concerns about her judgment. Ruth's hands clenched. Catherine caught her eye, shook her head slightly. Wait, Miss Harper's history, Catherine said coolly, is one of survival and competence. She was sold, yes, by a father who valued $50 more than his daughter. She worked for Mr. Turnbull under abusive conditions, then found honest work with Mr. Bennett. She's managed his ranch accounts, saved him thousands of dollars, and proven herself more than capable. If anything, her history demonstrates exceptional judgment under impossible circumstances. She lived unmarried with a man, Pritchard insisted. That alone is legal. There's no law against cohabitation between consenting adults. And even if there were, it's irrelevant to the question at hand. Does the law permit marriage contracts with non-traditional terms? The answer is yes. Everything else is prejudice dressed up as precedent. Judge Cartwright held up a hand. I'll hear from Miss Harper directly. Approach the bench. Ruth's legs felt like water, but she stood. Walked to the front. Met the judge's eyes. Miss Harper, why do you want property rights retained in your name? Because I've been property twice, Your Honor. I won't be property again, not even in marriage. You don't trust Mr. Bennett. I trust him completely, but I've learned that trust isn't enough. I need legal protection. I need to know that if something happens to him, if he changes his mind, if circumstances shift, I'll still have a foundation to stand on. That's not lack of faith. That's self-preservation. And if I rule against you, if I uphold the council's decision, then I'll live with Mr. Bennett without the paper. But I'll keep fighting, because this isn't just about me. It's about every woman who'll come after me. Every girl who's told her value is in what she can do for others, not in who she is. I'm done accepting that. I'm done being small. And if that makes me improper or unwomanly, or whatever else they want to call me, then so be it. I'd rather be free and improper than proper and caged. The courtroom was silent. Judge Cartwright studied Ruth for a long moment, then nodded. Sit down, Miss Harper. Ruth returned to her seat. Nate took her hand, squeezed. They'd done everything they could. Now they waited. Judge Cartwright reviewed her notes. The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. This case touches on fundamental questions about autonomy and contract law. The question before me is simple. Does the law permit marriage contracts that deviate from traditional property arrangements? After reviewing precedent, I find that it does. Marriage is a civil contract. The terms of that contract, as long as they're legal and agreed upon by both parties, are enforceable. Pritchard stood. Your Honor, this sets a dangerous— I'm not finished, Mr. Pritchard. Sit down. Her voice cracked like a whip. The Copper Bend Town Council has no legal authority to block a marriage license based on the contract's internal terms. Their role is to verify identity and legal capacity to marry, nothing more. Their refusal to issue a license is an abuse of discretionary power. Ruth's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. Therefore, Judge Cartwright continued, I'm ordering Copper Bend to issue the license immediately. Furthermore, I'm establishing precedent. Women in this territory have the right to retain property in their own names upon marriage if both parties consent. This is now territorial law. The gavel fell. The courtroom erupted. Ruth couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Had they won? Had they actually won? Nate pulled her to her feet into his arms. We did it. Ruth, we did it. We won. We won. She started laughing, a half-hysterical sound that turned into crying, which turned into more laughing. Catherine was smiling, actually smiling. Tobias was shaking his head like he couldn't quite believe it, and Pritchard looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Outside in the bright afternoon sun, Ruth stood on the courthouse steps and let it sink in. She'd won. Not just the case. She'd won the right to be herself, the right to choose, the right to love without losing herself. How do you feel? Nate asked. Free. Actually free. Good, because I'm never letting you go. You don't have to let me go. I'm choosing to stay. He kissed her then, right there on the courthouse steps in front of God, and the territorial capital, and anyone who cared to watch. And Ruth kissed him back, unafraid and unashamed, because she'd fought for this, earned it, and no one could take it away. They were married a week later in Copper Bend, in the small church Ruth had attended with Nate. The ceremony was simple. Ruth wore her blue dress. Nate wore his Sunday suit. Tobias stood as witness. Catherine Blake, who'd stayed for the wedding, stood on Ruth's side. The Reverend, a kind man who'd supported them throughout, spoke about partnership and equality, about building lives together, about love that chooses daily, not just once. When it came time for vows, Nate spoke first. I promise to stand beside you, not in front of you, to trust your judgment, to respect your independence, to love you not despite your strength but because of it. Ruth's turn. Her voice was steady. I promise to trust you with my heart even when it's hard. To build with you, not for you. To be honest even when the truth is uncomfortable. To choose you every day for as long as we both shall live. No mention of obedience. No promise to submit. Just partnership. Just choice. Just love. They signed the papers afterward. Ruth Harper and Nathaniel Bennett married under the new territorial law. Ruth kept her name. The property deed listed both of them as equal owners. Everything was legal. Everything was protected. Everything was theirs. At the small reception afterward, held at the ranch with food Ruth had cooked and friends they'd chosen, Eliza Morrison raised a glass. To Ruth and Nate, may they fight together instead of each other. And may they remember that love isn't just feeling, it's action, every single day. Hear, hear, Tobias echoed. Ruth looked around at these people who'd fought for them, who'd believed in them, who'd helped them win. Then she looked at Nate and saw her whole future in his eyes. Happy? He asked softly. Getting there. Just getting there. Well, you still make terrible coffee. That's a significant flaw. I'll work on it. You've been saying that for months. And I'll keep saying it for years. She laughed, and it was the sound of someone who'd forgotten how and was remembering. I love you, Nate Bennett. I love you too, Ruth Harper. Not Ruth Bennett. Ruth Harper. Because she'd fought to keep her name, fought to keep herself, and won. That night, after everyone left after the dishes were washed and the food put away, Ruth and Nate sat on their porch and watched the stars emerge. The summer air was warm. Crickets sang. Somewhere in the distance, a horse whinnied. "What are you thinking?" Nate asked. "That I spent so long believing I was broken. That I'd never be whole, never be enough. And then I met you and you showed me I was already whole. I just couldn't see it. You showed yourself. I just stood nearby. You did more than that. Maybe. But you did the hard part. You chose to believe you were worth fighting for." Ruth leaned her head on his shoulder. "We should probably go inside. Early day tomorrow." Probably. But neither moved. They sat there as the stars wheeled overhead and the land settled into night. Two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something real. Not perfect. Real. With all its flaws and fears and daily choices to keep choosing each other. And somewhere in the house behind them on a shelf beside Sarah's journal sat the deed to their ranch. Two names. Equal ownership. Legal and binding. Ruth Harper had won her freedom twice. Once in court. Once in her own heart. And this time, no one could take it away. The first year of marriage was harder than either of them expected. Not because they didn't love each other. Because love, it turned out, wasn't enough to erase decades of learned survival patterns. Ruth woke at 3 in the morning, sometimes convinced she was back at Turnbull's trading post. She'd stumble out of bed in a panic, need to see the deed with her name on it, touch the proof that this was real before her racing heart would slow. Nate learned not to grab her when she woke like that. Learned to speak softly, turn up the lamp, let her orient herself in her own time. "I'm sorry," she'd say afterward, embarrassed. "Don't be. Healing isn't linear." "I should be better by now. We won. We're married. I'm safe." "Your body doesn't know that yet. Give it time." Time became their most valuable commodity and their greatest challenge. Time to build trust that went bone deep. Time to unlearn old fears. Time to figure out how to be partners when neither of them had ever seen a partnership that looked like theirs. The ranch prospered under Ruth's management. She expanded their horse breeding operation, negotiated better contracts with suppliers, even convinced Nate to try cattle when the market shifted. Within 6 months, they doubled their profit. Within a year, they were one of the most successful ranches in the territory. That success brought its own problems. Men didn't like taking orders from a woman, even when she was right. Ruth learned to phrase her business decisions as suggestions to Nate, let him present them, then step back. It galled her, this performance of deference. But it worked. And sometimes survival meant choosing your battles. "I hate that you have to do that," Nate said one night after a particularly frustrating meeting with cattle buyers. "So do I. But I'd rather swallow my pride and keep the ranch profitable than insist on credit and lose the sale. It's not right." "No. But it's real. And we work with what's real, not what should be." He pulled her close. "Someday it'll be different. Maybe. But probably not in our lifetime. Then we make it different for the next generation." Ruth laughed, but there was an edge to it. "What next generation? We don't have children." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither had voiced until now. They'd been married a year. No children had come. Ruth didn't know if it was her body or just timing, but each month that passed without pregnancy felt like another failure added to her collection. "Ruth, don't tell me it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Women are supposed to have children. That's our value, right? And I can't even do that." "Your value isn't in children. It's in who you are." "Easy for you to say. You already had a child. You know what it's like." Nate flinched. She knew she'd hurt him bringing up Emma. But the words were out, poisonous and true. "I'm sorry," she said immediately. "I shouldn't have—" "No, you're right. I did have a child, and I lost her. And sometimes I wonder if this is punishment for not appreciating what I had. That's not how the world works. Isn't it? You were punished for being born different. I was punished for taking my family for granted. Maybe we're both just paying for old sins. I don't believe that. Neither do I. But sometimes in the dark I wonder. They held each other that night, two people carrying grief too big for words. And Ruth made a decision. If children didn't come, she'd find other ways to matter. Other ways to build something that lasted beyond her own life. She started teaching. Informally, at first helping ranchers' daughters with arithmetic and bookkeeping, then more formally holding classes in the church hall twice a week. Teaching girls that numbers were power, that understanding money meant understanding freedom. Agnes Pritchard objected, of course. You're putting ideas in their heads, making them dissatisfied with their lots. I'm teaching them to read ledgers. If that makes them dissatisfied, maybe their lots need changing. You're going to cause trouble. I've been causing trouble since the day I was born. Might as well make it count. The classes grew. 10 girls became 20. 20 became 30. Mothers started coming too. Women who'd never learned numbers, who'd been told math was for men. Ruth taught them, all patient and fierce, determined that no woman would be trapped by ignorance the way her mother had been trapped. Nate watched her transform into something powerful and was awed by it. This wasn't the scared girl he'd rescued. This was a force of nature reshaping the world, one ledger lesson at a time. You're amazing, he told her one night. I'm practical. There's a difference. No, you're changing lives. That's not practical. That's revolutionary. Don't romanticize it. I'm just teaching basic arithmetic. You're teaching freedom. Numbers are just the tool. Ruth smiled, but it was tired. The teaching took energy she didn't always have. Her burned hand ached more lately, the old injury protesting the constant use. Some nights she couldn't hold a pencil. Some mornings she couldn't make a fist. You need to rest, Nate said. I need to teach. These women are counting on me. And I'm counting on you to not work yourself into an early grave. I'm fine. You're not. Your hand's getting worse. I see you wince when you think I'm not looking. It's manageable. Ruth. I said it's manageable. Her voice went sharp. Don't coddle me. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I've survived worse than a little pain. I know you have. But you don't have to suffer just to prove you're strong. You can ask for help. Asking for help is weakness. No, it's trust. The word stopped her. Trust. The thing she'd been building slowly, painfully for 2 years. The thing that still felt fragile as spring ice. I don't know how, she admitted quietly. I don't know how to be weak around you without being afraid you'll use it against me. I won't. I never have. I know. Logically, I know. But there's a part of me that's still waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for you to get tired of difficult, damaged Ruth and wish you'd chosen someone easier. Nate pulled her into his lap, careful of her hand. I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. Really hear it. She nodded, not trusting her voice. You are the bravest person I've ever met. You're also stubborn, impossible, and you make the worst coffee I've ever tasted. Hey. Let me finish. You're all those things, and I love you more every day. Not less. More. Because every day you choose to stay, to trust me a little more, to build this life with me. That's the opposite of easy, Ruth. And it's exactly what I want. Her eyes burned. What if I can never give you children? What if my body's too broken for that? Then we'll have a different kind of family. We'll teach other people's daughters. We'll build something that matters in different ways. Or we'll adopt. Or we'll just be us. Any of that is enough. You wanted children. With Sarah, you wanted... I wanted a lot of things with Sarah. I got 3 years and 1,000 memories and a grief that nearly killed me. Life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you get. And what I got with you is better than anything I could have wanted, because it's real. No fantasy, no perfect picture. Just real, messy, complicated love. And that's worth more than any dream. Ruth cried then, the way she only cried with him. Deep shaking sobs that came from the place where she kept all her fear and doubt. He held her through it, and when she was done, she felt lighter. Not healed, but less alone in her brokenness. 2 years became 3. The ranch expanded. Ruth's classes grew to 50 students. They hired help, a young couple named James and Anna, who needed work and a place to start. Ruth taught Anna bookkeeping. Anna taught Ruth to crochet, a skill that was easier on her damaged hand than sewing. Life settled into something that almost felt like peace. But peace, Ruth was learning, was fragile, could be shattered by a single letter. It came on a Tuesday in late autumn. Tobias brought it, his face grave. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the return address made Ruth's stomach drop. Kansas, her father's last known location. She didn't want to open it, wanted to throw it in the fire and pretend it didn't exist. But Nate took her good hand and said, "Whatever it says, we face it together." So she opened it. Read the words once, twice, couldn't make sense of them. "Ruth, what is it?" "My mother's dead." Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Died 3 weeks ago. Consumption. My father's asking me to come home, to help with the funeral arrangements, and he needs money. The farm's failing. He says I owe him. Says family takes care of family." "You don't owe him anything." "I know. But she's still my mother." "She let him sell you." "I know that too." Ruth stood, walked to the window, stared out at land that was half hers by law and wholly hers by right. Her mother was dead. The woman who'd birthed her, nursed her, then stood silent while her husband sold her like livestock. Dead. She waited for grief, felt nothing. Just a vast empty space where feeling should be. "I need to go," she said finally. "Ruth." Not to give him money, not to help, but to see her buried, to know it's really over. Does that make sense? "Yes, and I'm coming with you." "You don't have to. I'm coming with you." They rode out 2 days later, leaving James and Anna in charge of the ranch. The journey to Kansas took a week-long days of silence and cold camps, and Ruth retreating into herself in ways she hadn't done in years. "Talk to me," Nate said one night by the fire. "What do you want me to say?" "Anything. You've barely spoken in 3 days." "I'm thinking. About how I feel nothing. My mother's dead and I feel nothing. What does that make me?" "Human. She hurt you, Ruth. You don't owe her grief just because she's gone." "But shouldn't I feel something? Shouldn't there be sadness or anger or anything?" "Maybe the grief will come later, or maybe it won't. Both are okay." "How is it okay to feel nothing when your mother dies?" "Because she stopped being your mother the day she let you be sold. The woman who died was a stranger who happened to share your blood. You're allowed to grieve that. You're also allowed not to." Ruth pulled her knees to her chest, stared into the flames. "When Emma died, did you feel it right away?" "The grief." Nate was quiet for a long time. "No. First I felt nothing. Just numb, like someone had packed my chest with snow. The grief came later in waves. Sometimes I'd be fine for days, then something small would break me. The smell of Sarah's perfume. Emma's laugh echoing in memory. It took years before I could remember them without bleeding." "Do you still bleed?" "Sometimes. But it's different now. Less sharp. More like an old ache than a fresh wound. That's what I'm afraid of. That when the grief comes, it'll destroy me. Because I won't just be grieving my mother. I'll be grieving the mother I never had. The mother who should have protected me. The mother I deserved and never got. Then I'll help you carry it. That's what I'm here for." The Harper farm looked worse than Ruth remembered. Fences falling down, barn roofs sagging, fields overgrown with weeds. Her father stood on the porch, older and meaner, grief sitting on him like a crow on a fence post. "Ruth." No warmth in the word, just acknowledgement. "Father." "Took you long enough." I came as fast as I could. His eyes cut to Nate. Bennett. Figured you'd tag along. Mr. Harper. Nate's voice was ice. Funeral's tomorrow. I need money for a proper burial. $500 should cover it. Ruth laughed a sharp, bitter sound. You want me to pay to bury the mother you sold me away from? She was still your mother. Was she? Because I don't remember her acting like it. Don't speak ill of the dead girl. Or what you'll sell me again. Oh wait, you can't, because I'm not property anymore. I'm a person, with rights, and money, and the power to tell you no. Malachi's face went purple. I'm your father. You owe me respect. I owe you nothing. Not respect, not money. Not even my presence at this funeral. The only reason I came was to make sure she was really dead. To know it's finally over. You ungrateful. I'm done. Ruth's voice cut through his rage like a knife. Done with your guilt. Done with your demands. Done with pretending we're family when we never were. I'll pay for the funeral, because she deserves a decent burial, even if she didn't deserve to be called a mother. But after tomorrow, I never want to see you again. You're dead to me, just like she is. She walked away, leaving her father sputtering on the porch. Found the small cemetery where her grandparents were buried, where her mother would be laid to rest tomorrow. Stood at the empty grave and tried to feel something. Nate came up beside her. You okay? I don't know. Ask me in a year. Fair enough? They stood there as the sun set, two people at a grave for someone who'd never really lived. At least not in any way that mattered. The funeral was small. Just Ruth, Nate, her father, and Ezekiel, who'd grown into a harder, meaner version of the boy who'd laughed at her sale. The Reverend spoke platitudes about Martha Harper's devotion to family. Ruth wanted to scream that it was all lies. That her mother's devotion had extended to everyone except the daughter who'd needed her most. But she stayed silent. Let them bury their fantasy of who Martha Harper had been. She knew the truth. That was enough. Afterward, her father tried one more time. Ruth, I know I wasn't perfect, but I did my best. Your best was selling me for $50. If that's your best, I'd hate to see your worst. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. And people live with consequences. Here's yours, you die alone. Ezekiel will leave as soon as you're gone. No one will mourn you. And when they bury you in this same cemetery, I won't be there. That's the consequence of choosing money over your child. You get to die knowing you threw away the only person who might have loved you. She walked away. Didn't look back. Got on her horse beside Nate and rode away from that farm, that life, that history. They were a mile down the road when Ruth finally spoke. I thought I'd feel something. Saying goodbye to her, telling him off. I thought I'd feel satisfaction or grief or anger, but I just feel empty. The feeling will come. Give it time. What if it doesn't? What if I'm just broken in a way that can't be fixed? Then you're broken, so what broken things can still be beautiful, still be useful, still be loved? Ruth looked at him. This man who'd chosen her despite everything, who'd fought for her, who loved her not because she was perfect, but because she was real. I love you, she said. I don't say it enough. But I do. You saved my life. No, you saved your own life. I just gave you a safe place to do it. They rode toward home, toward the ranch that was theirs, toward the life they'd built from nothing. And somewhere along that road, Ruth felt the first crack in the numbness. Not grief exactly, but something. Acknowledgement, maybe. That her mother was gone, and it was okay to feel complicated about that. Okay to be sad for what never was, instead of what was lost. That night, camped under stars, Ruth told Nate about her childhood. The good parts she'd forgotten. Her mother teaching her to bake bread. Her mother singing while she worked. Small moments of tenderness buried under years of betrayal and silence. She wasn't all bad, Ruth said. That's what makes it harder. If she'd been a monster, I could hate her cleanly. But she had good in her. She just didn't have enough courage to act on it. That's the saddest kind of person. The ones who know better but choose comfort over courage. Is that what I would have become if you hadn't bought my contract? Someone who knew better but was too scared to fight? No, you would have fought. Maybe not right away, but eventually. You're not made for silence, Ruth. You're made for revolution. She smiled at that. Revolution, that's a big word. It's a big thing you're doing. Teaching women to read numbers, to understand money, to see themselves as capable. That's revolutionary, and it's changing lives. One ledger at a time. That's how all revolutions work. Small changes that add up to big ones. They reached home a week later, and Ruth had never been so grateful to see anything in her life. The cabin, the barn, the land stretching green and gold in the autumn light. This was home. Not the place she'd been born, but the place she'd chosen. The place she'd built with her own hands and her own will. Anna and James had kept everything running perfectly. The ranch was thriving. Ruth's students had kept meeting taught by Anna in her absence. Life had gone on without her, which should have been humbling, but was actually comforting. She'd built something that could exist without her, that would outlast her. Over the next few months, Ruth finally grieved. Not loud dramatic grief. Quiet tears while cooking. Unexpected sobs while teaching. Moments where the loss of what could have been hit her like a physical blow. Nate held her through it, asked no questions, just provided steady presence while she worked through feelings too complicated for words. And slowly, the grief transformed into something else. Not acceptance exactly, but understanding. Her mother had been a woman trapped by her own choices, too afraid to choose differently, even when it cost her everything that mattered. Ruth could pity that without forgiving it. Could acknowledge the waste without taking on the guilt. "I think I'm ready," Ruth said one night. Ready for what? To try. For children. I know I said I didn't care if it happened or not, but I do. I want to raise someone better than I was raised. I want to break the cycle. Nate pulled her close. Then we'll try. And if it happens, wonderful. If it doesn't, we'll love each other and the life we've built. Either way, we win. When did you get so wise? I married you. That was the wisest thing I ever did. 6 months later, Ruth realized she was pregnant. She was terrified. Convinced her broken body would fail at this too. Convinced she'd be a terrible mother. Convinced every fear her family had planted in her would come true. But Nate talked her through it. And Anna, who'd had 3 babies, talked her through it. And her students, some of whom were mothers, talked her through it. And slowly, Ruth started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. The pregnancy was hard. Her body ached. The burned hand swelled and hurt constantly. Some days, she couldn't get out of bed. But Nate was there taking over her work, supporting her students, making terrible coffee that she pretended to drink. 7 months in, Ruth went into early labor. It was terrifying, painful, nothing like she'd been told. But 36 hours later, a daughter was born, small but healthy, screaming with outrage at the world. Ruth held her and cried. Not from pain, from joy so overwhelming it felt like drowning. She's perfect. Nate whispered, tears streaming down his face. She's beautiful. What do we name her? Ruth looked at her daughter, this tiny person who was half her, half Nate, wholly herself. Thought about second chances. About building something better. About breaking cycles. Hope, she said. We name her Hope. The years that followed were hard and beautiful and ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Ruth taught Hope numbers before letters taught her that her worth wasn't in her appearance or her obedience, but in her choices. Taught her that love was action, not just words. That freedom was something you fought for every day. Hope grew strong and stubborn and fierce, a perfect combination of both her parents. She inherited Ruth's gray eyes and Nate's determination. By the time she was 5, she could calculate feed costs in her head. By 10, she was helping run the ranch. By 15, she was teaching her own students. Ruth watched her daughter become someone she'd never imagined possible. A woman who'd never known what it felt like to be considered property. Who took her rights for granted because Ruth had fought to make them normal. That was the gift. Not that Hope appreciated the fight, but that she didn't have to. Nate aged well, silver threading through his hairlines, deepening around his eyes. Ruth aged harder, the burned hand finally giving out completely when she was 40, forcing her to learn everything left-handed. But she adapted. She always adapted. On their 20th anniversary, they sat on the same porch where they'd sat the night they were married. Hope was 17, away at school in Helena learning law because she wanted to change even more than her mother had. "Do you regret any of it?" Ruth asked. "The fighting, the struggle, the years of battle?" "Not even for a second. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That's when it mattered most." Ruth leaned her head on his shoulder, something she'd done 1,000 times, but never took for granted. "I love you. I know I don't say it enough. You say it every day, in how you run this ranch, in how you raised our daughter, in how you changed this whole territory's laws. That's love, Ruth. Active, powerful, real. I just taught some women arithmetic. You taught them freedom. There's a difference." 20 years became 30. Nate's hair went fully gray. Ruth's body finally forced her to slow down, the years of hard work taking their toll. But her mind stayed sharp. She kept teaching until she was 65, only stopping when her students insisted she'd taught them everything she knew. Hope became the first female lawyer in Montana Territory. Married a man who respected her work. Had children she raised to question everything. The cycle was broken. The revolution was complete. Nate died at 73, in his sleep peaceful. Ruth held his hand and said goodbye to the man who'd seen her when everyone else looked away, who'd stood beside her when everyone else tried to stand in front, who'd loved her not for being easy, but for being real. She lived another 10 years after that, long enough to see Montana become a state, long enough to see women get the vote, long enough to see her granddaughters choose their own paths without asking permission from any man. On her last day, surrounded by family in the house Nate had built, Ruth looked at her daughter and said, "I did it. I broke the cycle." "You did more than that, Mama. You started a new one." Ruth Harper died at 83 in the same bed where she'd first slept as a free woman. The newspaper obituary called her a pioneer, a teacher, a reformer. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that she'd been sold for $50 and died owning half a ranch worth thousands. That she'd been called worthless and proved she was priceless. That she'd been told she was broken and built an empire anyway. She'd been property twice and died belonging only to herself. That was her legacy, not the money or the land or even the laws she'd helped change, but the simple revolutionary act of looking at a world that said she was nothing and insisting she was everything. And somewhere in that same house, on a shelf beside Sarah's journal and the original property deed, sat Ruth's own writings. Dozens of ledgers filled with calculations, yes, but also journals filled with thoughts, advice, and one line repeated in her careful handwriting on the final page. "Your worth is not determined by what others see in you, but by what you choose to become." Ruth Harper had chosen to become free, and in doing so, she'd freed countless others. That was how revolutions worked. One choice at a time, one woman at a time. One moment of courage that echoed through generations. She'd been sold for being broken. She'd died having built something unbreakable. And that made all the difference.